Hello, I'm Nick Axton, and welcome to the first in our series of short briefings covering current hot topics affecting the Treasury community. Managing foreign exchange risk has always been on the Treasurer's agenda, but in an increasingly complex world economy, it's now getting plenty of focus at board level, as it can affect the profitability of global businesses. And of course, most recently, we saw the impact of currency volatility following the results of the EU referendum. I'm joined today by Rob Waddington. So Rob, what recommendations do you have for companies that are exposed to foreign exchange risk in the current environment?
So Nick, the first recommendation or first area I always think people should be looking at is making sure they truly understand their exposures. And by that I mean looking at the nature, the timing and the quantity. But there's 3 points for me just to emphasise here. Firstly is that often it's Treasury that are given the responsibility for managing FX, but the reality is they often have to deal with people in finance, with sales and procurement, therefore they need to have good relationships with them. The second point is that it might well have been a fair few years ago that you did your assessment of what your exposures are. Things have changed, new customers, new suppliers, new markets that you've gone into, so please do reassess your understanding of those exposures. And the last point to make on this is that please consider accounting implications and the cash flow implications of your exposures. Often they're the same, but there are instances when they're not.
Okay, so the first step is to understand or perhaps reassess your exposures. What's the next step?
So once you've understood your exposures, done some sensitivity on them, for me the next step is then making sure that you're clear on what your risk appetite is and there's a policy to back that up. What I find is always important is that you make sure that everybody in the organisation is fully aware of what your risk appetite is, because then it just helps with understanding what the FX volatility is from.
Okay, so is the best solution to go out and enter into derivatives?
I always try and keep things simple, so not always the right case is to enter into derivatives. For me, I always try and look for natural offsets. By that I mean looking for euro sales that offset euro costs. If there's an exposure left at the end, yes, derivatives is something you can look into, such as FX forwards and FX options. Okay,
so to summarise, companies should focus on, firstly, not just assuming this is a Treasury thing, include the wider business. Secondly, look at accounting and cash flow impacts. Thirdly, don't always think you need to use derivatives. Think about where you've got natural offsets first. And fourthly, be proactive. Don't wait for an unexpected volatility or exposure. Thanks, Rob. Some useful insights. Look out for our next briefing, where we'll be covering the Treasurer's favourite topic, hedge accounting, and the changes coming under the new accounting standard, IFRS 9. Thank you for watching.